would like to introduce to you James Moore. He's the development lead for the next gen bare metal development team. And James will be taking you through the demo. If you could, I mean, I don't like to restrict Q&A. You know how this goes, right? But if it's a question that you can leave until the end, that would be good. But if you feel so inclined to jump in, we can make this interactive as well. So I want everybody to appreciate what we've been doing here and be able to understand what we're trying to demonstrate. So with that, James, I think you'll want to go ahead and take the share.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Go for it.
Yeah, so what we wanted to demonstrate here is the general functionality of the internal early access. And the focus from the beginning for this milestone has been to provide a uniform customer experience when they're ordering physical servers for a VPC. And so the customer's user interaction with the system for internal early access is through the IBM Cloud CLI. This is a standard deployment of the IBM Cloud CLI with the infrastructure services plugin that allows the customer to deploy both virtual server instances and now bare metal instances in a seamless way. So from their perspective, they just know that they need an instance to do something to meet their criteria. Some of those instances are virtual, and some of those instances must be physical. And so the Cloud CLI itself remains unchanged, and we surface all of our capabilities from the zonal layer where we did a great deal of work up through RIAS into a point where the customer can interact with the system without knowing that anything has changed. And so how do they actually end up getting a bare metal instance? Simply through another profile. So another profile is there in the system, which you'll see, and it represents a bare metal server that gets deployed as an instance. And through that, they're able to perform all the normal operations that they would expect to perform on an instance. So the ability to create or delete an instance and perform the power operations on an instance, start, stop, and restart. One difference between a virtual server instance and a physical server instance, besides the normal thought of one's virtual, one's physical, is that the billing and metering continues to accrue throughout the life cycle operation. We've implemented that as well. So from IBM's perspective, when that hardware is actually provisioned to the customer, from the time they get it until the time that they relinquish it through the delete, the metering continues whether the machine is started or stopped. A second difference between the virtual server instances and the bare metal instances is the console that we provide. So a customer needs to be able to interact with a physical server, even if something has happened during runtime with the operating system. They want to diagnose some problem that they're having with what they deployed, and they can go through and interact with that physical server in an out-of-band way, not through the management network, let's say associated with ESXi, but directly through a console that we provide, and that's pretty cool. On the right side here, I'll just touch upon some of the things that we've done in preparation for this release. We do have release documentation that was created that goes through the deployment and configuration, usage and troubleshooting of the product. And for internal early access customers, there's the ability to be supported by the development team through Slack channels and email. And we've done quality control testing ourselves as well for all of the repositories that we've modified throughout the IBM Cloud's next-gen ecosystem, and for our repositories that we've created in support of the product. So we've done full unit testing. We have the correct percentage of code coverage, done build validation testing and system validation testing. So it's a pretty great accomplishment. what does it look like from a deployment perspective? We have a M zone that's physically located in Dallas. This is the actual end zone name here. That M zone has the typical things that you would see in a typical M zone that just supports, let's say, VSI, is your master control edge. The M zone itself is located in the Dallas data center in the US South region. An important thing to make sure that we really impress upon everyone is that it's an end-to-end deployment. And so we have RIAs up, running, configured. We address all of our life cycle and power operations using that CLI with a next-gen API endpoint that we have up and running. Our IAM services are done through testcloudibm.com. And all of these bare metal servers are actually the Gen 2 servers that have the JBOD NVMe deployed on them. This means that if someone like VMware, and in fact our demo uses ESXi as the operating system that's deployed on the bare metal machines, that they can actually use these for things, like vSAN and stuff like that. So what are we going to show you in this demo? We're going to show you that we can provision bare metal instances, reserve the physical servers into a VPC. We're going to connect them into a subnet. And on those bare metal instances, we'll go ahead and configure ESXi. A caveat on the internal early access is that we provide the solution that goes from the point of requesting your instance all the way to creating the instance, minus the configuration of the operating system. The configuration of the operating system with the software-defined networking IPs that are provided through the instance's network interface, the primary network interface, you'll see that we'll use the console in order to configure that manually. This is something that in a general availability solution will be done in an automated manner. So we'll have our two bare metal instances so that you can see the reservation and that the instance bring up, it looks just like a VSI. We'll configure those ESXi hosts with the SDN IPs. Then we'll look to a VSI on a separate subnet. This is actually a jump server that we have. And we'll create some virtual machines in each one of the ESXi deployments. Why are we doing that? Because these virtual machines will actually have the IPs associated with secondary network interfaces provided through a VPC and assigned to them. And we're going to go ahead and show that you can have connectivity with those IPs from VM to VM within a bare metal instance, also externally outside of the VPC to the internet, to a VSI itself on a separate subnet, and then between hosts, between the VMs on hosts as well. And so let's take a look at this in action. So you can see I have a configuration here that I talked about in the PowerPoint. The IAM going through testcloudibm.com. We're using the IBM Cloud CLI. This is a standard deployment. I'm using API key in order to do all of my sign-in. This is the instance profile that I mentioned. All of these IBM Cloud commands, they reference the instance profile when you're creating the server instance. The zone is properly set. And then here's that image that I had mentioned. Let me show you some of the stuff that's already on our M zone. It's a working M zone. And you can see that there's a couple of VPCs. We're going to use all of the elements labeled IEA-. Those are our demo artifacts. And the reason that these are here is because it's not very interesting. There's no differentiation between the VPC or a subnet or a floating IP for the VPC bare metal versus BSI. We want to focus on the differentiation. Now let's create a couple of instances. And before I do that, let me show you this command. You could see that it's running IBM Cloud Infrastructure Services list instances. And in our system right now, we have both bare metal systems and virtual systems deployed already. This is the jump host that I referenced in the demo PowerPoint. And you see the difference only is simply that there's a different profile. So from the customer's perspective here, they say, great, I could go to IBM and I can get virtual servers and I can get physical servers. I could get them quickly and I could get them in a uniform manner as far as the user experience is concerned. You see that some of the bare metal instances have a floating IP associated with them and some of them do not. We're going to associate floating IPs with the instances that we create. So now we're going to create the two bare metal instances. What you see here is an alias for the IBM Cloud CLI IC, infrastructure services, instance create. We're going to create the machine named IEA demo BMI1, a whole bunch of hashes. They're representative of the subnet, the zone here, the profile, the image ID, and then there's a JSON that gets created for the driver of this demo that lists the NICs that will be associated with the instance. I can show you what's in that file for completeness. And it's simply saying that on this subnet, we're going to create this interface. So the first one, I actually am not going to create any secondary interfaces to show that there's a difference and that it's possible. And we'll create secondary interfaces subsequently. You can see that already it's transition. There's a instance that's created and it's starting. It will actually transition to running. Takes a little bit of time because the actual physical server is going through the lifecycle process right now of creation. Let me go through and create the second one with the secondary interfaces. I'm going to try to switch back and forth really quickly here so you can see it. We'll highlight this, and then you'll see below it, it shows up. Okay. So essentially, this is just sitting there. The watch command just continually every second runs this and does it in a really cool way so that you can see, hey, things are starting, running, et cetera, et cetera. And now we could open a console. The console we get a list of provisioned bare metal instances, and when we inspect that list, IEA demo bare metal instance 1, this is the ID in the control plane, and it says it's E93. So if we look for our instance in the M zone, we look for E93. We see that it's on F16, and the console is available through port FP916. Let's open the VNC session, and you can see that it's loading VMware. It does take a while for VMware to go from pretty much stopped to up and running. Once it is running, we'll configure the management network manually through the console here. Let's look for the next one. 35D is on S22. And we'll go to S22. And you can see it's going through also the process of loading. Now, while this is booting up and we're waiting for the configuration, I'll just leave those two open like this. Let's go ahead and associate some floating IPs with these bare metal instances. This will allow us to go ahead and open the VMware portal, the web portal. So let's now take a look and make sure that when we run the command IBM Cloud IS IPs to list the floating IPs, that in fact we don't see anything that says IEA demo in here. And we don't see any floating IPs associated with this. And we can create the floating IPs. Okay. You'll see that a floating IP will get created and associated with the, there it goes, with the instance. And this is the information that came out of the control plane, the regional control plane, through the CLI. We'll do it again for the second ESXi. See, it's BMI2. This is the interface that it will be associated with. And this is the floating IP that we want to create. Here you can see that it should show up right under that. There it goes, right there. And you can see it did get associated with the bare metal instance. Okay, so the next steps will be to configure ESXi, see if it's up and running yet. Almost there. I believe the end-to-end deployment time for ESX is around 4 minutes. But while we're here, we can actually go ahead and inspect the instance. And what you can see is that it is the system is running. Here is the profile, that it is a bare metal instance as associated with the profile, that we have a good number of CPUs, that Intel architecture, that we're in the IEA VPC, and that for this particular instance, it has one network interface. Now, remember a moment ago, I had said that I was going to provision one instance with only a primary network interface and the other instance with secondary network interfaces. So let's take a look at the second instance. It's very easy to miss a hash value. But you can see here, it is demo BMI2, and it is in the IEA VPC. And when we created this instance, because we specified that we wanted secondary interfaces, that they were created as well. Now, the IP that we're going to associate with the management network for ESX is this private IP. And even though we're associating the private IP with ESX for the management network, you'll be able to address this physical server from the web browser using the floating IP. There we go. So they're both up and running. And here we'll just set static IP addressing, and we want to give it this IP. Set the subnet mask and the gateway. Apply the changes, restart the management network. And then I like to test the network by just hitting the Google DNS. It shows that there's connectivity out of the VPC. And we get an OK. We're done with this server. Put S22 and configure this deployment. And for this guy here, we need restart that management network, test that we have connectivity.
Hey, James, just FYI, for me, the screen is running a little behind what you're saying. So just keep that in mind that people may not see exactly what you're showing at the given point in time.
The power of bare metal instances overwhelming WebEx.
Yeah.
So we have these two configured. All right. So this is the first bare metal instance VMware portal. And let's get the second one. Okay. So you can see both servers. The physical server is called S16, and this we call this S22 for these ESXi deployments. There's nothing in them. See that there's no virtual machines. Let's create some. And the cool thing here is that when we're creating these virtual machines, they're automatically getting a secondary interface that's associated with the bare metal instance. So they're going to get an IP from the VPC SDN. It's going to get associated dynamically with the VM that's getting provisioned, and you'll be able to have access to the internet and to the other VMs and to the BSI jump host. So let me show you that. So we're targeting IEA demo BMI1. We're going to attach the, we're going to provision the secondary interface and the IP to be on our subnet 1, and this is the name of the VM. First thing you see is this secondary interface. There it is. Now let's quickly go back here and watch ESX, and you'll see that that VM shows up. There it is. It's going to take time to boot. There it goes. And now it's going to go through its initial configuration for a virtual machine that gets deployed from an OVA. While that's happening, why don't we do the other virtual machines? You see the same thing happen. There's that second one. And we'll see another one pop up in this list. And we're just doing this to show that those various networking scenarios that I had mentioned, communication within a ESXi host, across bare metal instances, from VMs on different hosts, to that jump server, which is on a different subnet, and then also to the internet. Now this is going to be deployed on the other bare metal instance, so we want to watch the other bare metal instance. This also shows that it doesn't matter if you provision secondary networking interfaces during create time on a bare metal instance, that you could still get the secondary interfaces, even though there were some associated at provisioning time. Okay, here we go. There it is. And there's that one. Now this is going to take a second for VMware to finish its configuration. And while that's going on, let me go to our, so I'm going to go to our jump host. You'll see here's the IP. So now we're on that VSI. Okay, so this one here is ready to go. We have a login prompt. Okay. Now, if you look here, it's 131.79. That's the IP for this VM. And if we look at the bare metal instances networking interfaces, 131.79, 131.79. So dynamically created that interface in the SDN within the VPC, took that IP address, provisioned the virtual machine onto ESX, dynamically configured the IP address, and you'll have connectivity. We could hit the Google DNS, so we go to the internet. We can curl a website. We can go from the jump host and ping the VM. So this is VSI to VMI-VM. Okay. We could ping the other VM, which by now should be up and running. So this is VM to VM within the same host. Can't make this font any bigger, sorry, but you should be able to see that it is working. So it's VM to VM. And then finally, let's look to see if the VM on, okay, it's up and running. Okay, so that's VM host 2 to VM on host 1. Let me go ahead and shut these down. Shut this one down. Shut this one down. There's one thing I did want to show real quick is the ability to shut down the bare metal instances. That's another lifecycle operation that we implemented. So pretty much everything is implemented. It's just wanting to show it. Okay, now if you look here, IEA demo BMI1 is running. Go ahead and stop the instance. It's going to ask us if we want to. It transitions to stop. And let me do it. So it's just stopping up here, and then you'll see this go away. And then I'll hand it over to questions.
James, you got the delete also working, or at this point only stopping?
It does. It does work. Yeah. Let me go ahead and do the delete on BMI1. Okay, there's the console went away because the machine stopped. Let's quickly go back here. You'll see that BMI1 should go away. Oh, I believe I have to hit yes. There, it's gone. Just for 2. Yes. And that's it. And that's the end-to-end demo for the bare metal next gen bare metal cloud IEA release.
Pretty impressive, James. That's good.
Thanks.
Pretty impressive.
Yep. Very well
James.
done.
Yeah. Thank you, James.
James,
Any
one question on,
questions? Go
I
ahead.
had a quick question on the console before we get into other stuff, right? Because
Yes.
the console has multiple uses. Just wanted to understand little more on the console. Is it something that you've been developing alongside with the Gen Control team, or how is this console developed? Because it has multiple uses that it can.
We developed this solution. We originally were hoping to leverage some of the stuff that was already being developed, but it wasn't there yet. So what we ended up doing was creating a solution that is done in the sort of the same format as what is intended to be done for the broader next gen. And what this actually does is it interacts with the Supermicro DMC using the Redfish API standard from the DMTF, and it provides a IKVM HTML5 console. And what you're seeing here is the VNC pod that surfaces that IKVM HTML5 console for the user. So the user's coming in through VNC, and that's buffering them from actually having broader access to the underlying network. So all that they have access to is just the HTML5 console.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining. The recording will be available. I'll send out an email with a link to the recording. So if you enjoyed it that much and want to watch it again, you can certainly do that, or send it on to some of your friends and family. All right. So again, thanks for joining. And I think Chandra will close it off right now.
Thanks all. Thank you.